I'm Martin Hilditch, Managing Editor of Inside Housing magazine, and the aim is for today's session, organised with information builders, to look at the challenges and opportunities when it comes to the smarter use of data in the housing sector. So looking at how data can improve tenant experience and organisational performance. With a bit of luck, we'll be providing some top tips for people moving forwards too. So I'll introduce our expert panellists in a moment, but first some background to help set the scene. Clearly, this discussion couldn't come at a more opportune moment. I doubt there's anybody listening who hasn't been ploughing through emails from companies about the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, as it's commonly known, which is implemented this week. So clearly, there's an important backdrop to the issues we're about to discuss, and no doubt we'll be picking up on this more a little bit later. Nevertheless, clearly social landlords have access to a huge amount of data about both the homes they manage and their tenants. But the use of this data is clearly patchy. While progress might have been made in part driven by regulation in recent years, there's a wide variation in practice out there, and I think that's commonly talked about, commonly discussed problem. And this can lead to decisions that aren't smart, whether we're talking about investment in stock or understanding the stresses some customers may be facing. So we want to be thinking today about how we can make smarter decisions, better decisions. And landlords' decision-making more widely is about to come under more scrutiny anyway, with the imminent publication of the Social Housing Green Paper, likely to probe landlords' performance and how well they're delivering on their social purpose. So lots of background issues that feed into today's debate. But as I mentioned, today is all about answers. And our expert panel will be talking us through their experiences and offering some practical insight into how organisations can more effectively consolidate, analyse and deploy the diverse information they hold. So we'll be hearing from Douglas Silverstone, Head of Data at Thames Valley Housing Association, about its approach. Next up, Dr. Laura Commodi, Head of Insight and Product Development at the Housing Association's Charitable Trust. Then we'll be hearing from Clinton Etheridge, Senior Pre-Sales Consultant at Information Builders. So lots of expert advice lined up, and we'll kick things off in a few moments with presentations. But this is also an opportunity for everybody listening into data, ask questions and get answers from our panel of experts. So please, during the presentations, as we're going along, ask away, and we'll pick things up as we go along. And I'll be asking some of those questions to panelists after the presentations in the discussion. So roughly that's the format. And if I can ask our panelists to stick to about 10 minutes each per presentation, that gives us plenty of time to discuss everybody's issues and questions at the end. Anyway, that's enough from me. Without further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming Douglas Silverstone. Doug, it's over to you.
Hi. Yes, I'm Doug Silverstone. I'm the Head of Data at Thames Valley Housing. We've been on a bit of a data journey for about 2 years now, 2 to 3 years, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we go. Like I say, so Thames Valley Housing, we've got about 16,000 properties, 35, 50,000 people, and generally, like most housing associations, a lot of data that we manage and collect, and traditionally we haven't particularly managed it well, and we've always been focused on what the applications we have and need are. We put them in, delivered a function, and then moved on. So the underlying data of that hasn't worked well. So for me, the way that data is going, I'm sure you've all seen the big charts of exponential data, more and more data all over the place, data about everything you need to gather is there, and at the same time, the core data you have isn't of good enough quality. So it's a real step change in the way we need to approach data. And if I don't seem to be able to move my slide. Oh, there we go. So I just want to sort of a bit of a context. So the World Economic Forum do a review every year, and this year, effectively, data has been moving up that power. So these are significant events that could really affect the global economy. And this year, 3 of the ones that are there are natural disasters, and the other 2 are related to data, cybersecurity attacks and data fraud. And it just shows the value that data contains and the importance of data in the world economy today. And below that, what you see everywhere, what we can and can't do with data, things like Cambridge Analytica, Google, all these uses of data and how they're working. Yet in the housing sector, we're only just starting to look at the data we have historically held, not what we can do with it. I mean, and then in the future, we've got Alexa coming on stream, and I see a world where we would all be able to say, all of our tenants would be able to say to Alexa or whatever it is, Alexa, can you decipher my latest service charge? Alexa, can you log a repair? Alexa, any other number of interactions, and they just do that. Things like Google Assist come along, and you can book a restaurant via Google Assist. They'll phone up and book you a restaurant table, and do really clever conversations with that. So it isn't beyond the realms of possibility that within a couple of years, we have a Google Assist phoning up our call center, logging a repair on behalf of our tenant. Keep going down that road. And if you're going to react to that sort of world, your data architecture needs to be sufficient to manage that. And traditionally, this is our data architecture. How can you do that when your data is everywhere? How can you pull out the one bit of information you need and make us more effective on that sort of time? And what's happened in the past, you've got all these, on the left here, you've got all the sort of inputs, people doing their day job, and they're just chucking data into an application, not thinking about it, and checking it out. And then on the other side of it, you've got people trying to pull data out of it. And in the middle, you've got this growing black hole of data that just grows and consumes more and more and more data. You can't have any sort of control over the top of it. You can't overlay it. And you certainly get any order on the chaos. And we need to move from that, and we need to allow us to collect more data, but only to collect the relevant data. And where there is relevant data elsewhere, we can build on top of that. So from that perspective, we started off, okay, we've got GDPR is a very important program, but as much, it was about, well, what data architecture do we need? And the easiest way I can talk about it is by saying that if you think about an egg timer, you've got all the sand in it, and the sand is the value to the business. And traditionally, that's been up in the application layer, that we've got some great functionality that we can put in place and can model on and can develop. But if you try and move that value down to where it is now in data, that's where you can really gain the benefits. So the minimum value possible, minimum viable product from agile kind of development is where applications sit. And if you can do small applications or that limit access to data in a controlled way, you can put all your effort into maintaining a larger data estate that is controlled and managed and agile, that you can pull in data sets as and when you need to. And to do that, you need this control layer for me in the middle that serves up whatever data a application needs according to a given schema. It will say, well, I'm the housing management system, I'm the CRM, I need information about customer, these fields, so I'm going to subscribe to this control layer and I'm going to pull that up. So your control layer is responsible for defining that data quality, and the application set is responsible for saying what data they need to consume. And no longer do applications pass data from CRM to housing system to asset management. It all goes via the quality control layer, whatever tools you use for that. And then on the other side, you've got a big data warehouse, a big data underneath that passes the information up. Again, the control layer says, I know I need this layer, so I've got these applications subscribing to this information, and I'm going to then publish it out to there. So the control layer is where you put your effort into defining that. And if everything goes through there, what you can do is to, like I say, minimize the amount of data at the application level. And when you do that, you start reducing the importance of that application, which means you can do real low-code applications. If you have a new business function, you can quickly put it on. When you don't need it anymore, you can throw it away. The data underlying it is still important, it's still valuable, and you can use it in very different ways. So that's the way we try and think about data, and that's how we structure it. And it just makes everything easier. So hopefully, the kind of things we're looking at going forward now is if we can have things like a happiness dashboard. So we can start monitoring social media in a given area. We can pull that information onto our data architecture, and we can measure whether in a given area those tweets, those Facebook messages are happy or not using natural language processing. And then we can compare whether that estate is happier effectively. We can combine it with the repairs, number of ASB cases, national crime stats, all the other stats that the ONS come up with, and we can come up with a number saying this estate is 50% happy, this one is 40% happy. We have a common metric across the whole of our estate, whole of our assets, and we can say then, this estate is getting happier, this estate is getting less. And we can, if we do that, when we then put a football project in on a particular estate, or we put even the house, we can then monitor the actual effect that has had, not only on cost and repairs, but actually the social well-being, the social construct of that estate as well. And we can get a real return on investment in both social and economic terms. The repairs app, what we're looking at is hopefully soon enough to be able to take a picture of a whatever is wrong, take a picture, say there's some issue with this cladding, issue with this soffits, take a picture, and between that and that, so a very short level of text and a picture should be all you need to do to log a repair. The rest of it should be able to be done in the system, because you know the data they are, you know what the phone number is, so you know who's logging it, you know where they live, you know the attributes in the home, you know what soffits there are, so it can be logged very quickly and efficiently. And you can then use that person in their home with their mobile phone as a first level diagnostic tool to help you through repairs. And then as you move further down, if we can start using real smart house technologies, there are lots of possibilities there that we're beginning to look at. And again, for estate management, a full view of what's going on in the estate, so that if you go to visit your estate, you'll also know that the top 3 questions we're trying to work out about that estate are X, Y, and Z, and you can feed that in and suck that into the data layer, and all of that comes together. So I think I'm close to my time, but I think I'll just leave you with saying that really the world is changing. It is all about data, and how you access that, how you manage it, is where the differentiation will come in the next 10 years about the housing associations that succeed and those that follow. And I think I'll hand over back to Martin now, and I think we'll take questions at the end, are we?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks very much, Doug. Lots of food for thought there. And yeah, as you were saying, we'll pick up on questions and have a discussion at the end of the presentations. What I would say to any attendees, though, anybody who's listening in, obviously this is your chance to ask questions of the experts, get hopefully some answers to the questions you've got. Obviously, I've got a lot of questions of my own, but do keep them coming in, and we'll answer them directly as we go along, as well as picking up on some of them in the discussion afterwards. So we will try and get through as many as we possibly can during the hour. Right, thanks very much. And next up, we've got Laura Cormody. I'll put my teeth back in. Apologies, Laura. Head of Insight and Product Development at the Housing Association's Charitable Trust. Laura, it's over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Laura Carmody from HACT. And if you don't know who HACT are, then we work with housing associations and sort of third parties around housing associations to sort of lead innovation and change within the sector. And I was asked to speak today about some of the work that HACT's been doing around creating a data standard for the housing sector. So really, this project came out from our own experience with poor data, in that we took on some data projects and found that we couldn't actually do much of what we were asking or what we were trying to do. Just trying to move the slides on for you. Perfect. So in 2013, HACT actually undertook a big data project. So when big data sort of came out into the sector, HACT thought that we could have a go and see what insights we could glean from all of the information that housing associations have. So we kind of put out to the sector that we were going to try something. We'd secured some computing power with Microsoft, who said that they were looking for data sets to kind of run through their new systems, and would housing be a good candidate for that. So we sort of worked with them to get this together. And the idea was that we would collect housing association data. So the example I give in the slide is around boiler repairs. We'd get that from 10 or more different housing associations. We'd bring it all together, we'd clean it up a little bit, because obviously it normally comes from different systems, and we'd start to identify patterns and then make predictions. So we were really looking at trying to break into the world of predictive analytics. So the idea being that we could start to say that a particular boiler of a particular make would fail at a particular time, and it would be this component, for example, that might fail, and therefore we can start to think about our cyclical maintenance and actually kind of catching these before it becomes a major breakdown. So this all sounded absolutely fantastic, and we were really excited about doing this. But actually, when we went through the data cleanse cycle, we got everything in, we started to put the data sets together. We realized, and Microsoft realized as well, that the data just wasn't comparable, that different housing associations weren't recording things in the same way. And therefore it was really difficult to be able to make those comparisons for certain. So it's the apples and apples analogy. So we sort of took a step back and said, well, what really is the problem? Why should it be so difficult to look at things around boilers, which obviously we have? Why are these not being kind of put in the same way? And the answer to that was that it's not standardized, that housing associations do record information in very bespoke ways sometimes. So we decided that actually the step forward was to create a data standard. So when we started having conversations with the sector, we realized that actually there's a lot of interest around having a data standard because of some of the questions that I've sort of listed on the slide and some of the common things that we were having. So people not knowing what was meant when different departments referred to a unit, or when different housing associations were talking about a unit or a property. What does that actually mean? Why do different tenants why do tenants have different numbers depending on sort of how they've come into the organisation, or the different stakeholders who are engaged with them? How do we actually integrate different systems who have maybe a unique number but hold different information? So your asset management system and your housing management system. And the one that normally most people recognise is the 118-year-old tenants, because of the default date of birth of the 1st of the 1st, 1900. So data standardisation and data quality was something that was really prime within the sector. So what HACC did was get 17 housing association project partners together, and actually Doug from TVHA is one of them, so he can answer some questions as well, and set about creating a data standard. So we launched the first version of this in January of this year with a partner organisation who is a US-based data standards agency called OSCAR. We worked with OSCAR and the project partners to tackle a small aspect of housing data, but what the project partners felt was a very important aspect, or aspects of housing data, which was data around the voids and allocations process. And sitting within that standard are two data exchange standards, one around getting the initial tenancy application, and then one around raising a repair during the void process. And we also created a standard around customer data, so thinking about that key pieces of information that you need around your customers. So that's where the project sits currently, and we've got lots of information on the website which is downloadable for you to be able to have a look at if you're interested. But really, it was about thinking about what's the benefits of having a data standard. Why was this something that was so important, other than just being able to do the fun predictive analytics? And there's a whole suite of benefits, and I have conversations with people regularly around the data standards, and each time I do, new benefits come to light. So I was speaking yesterday to an organisation, and they were talking about, stock rationalisation, and if actually you are buying and selling stock between housing associations, having a standard way of containing that information and what information you have makes that process easier. The same is said obviously for mergers as well, which are happening throughout the sector. Having that information means that bringing two systems together is a lot easier, and that's kind of listed on this slide as well, around sort of integration of systems and databases. If you've got that information standardized, it becomes a lot of a quicker process to do that. You can build your skills and your capabilities, and actually once you've got a good handle of the data that you have, that's when innovation can begin, because you're certain of what you're holding and you've got the right information to your fingertips. It helps with data quality. Obviously there's still some validation that has to happen, but it definitely helps with data quality, and to shed a light on where you need to focus your efforts around data cleanse and things like that. It opens up the market to be able to procure other systems if they're following the standard as well. So there's a whole suite of benefits that go with the data standard, and we're hoping that over time those will be realised as the data standard starts to be adopted. So just to kind of delve in a little bit, I've just pulled out the sort of business benefits of the customer data standard that we created. So, to think about, this is the first, this is the data that you need about your customers, about the residents who live with you, and how if you get that right from the beginning, then, all of the things that you need to do involving that person, whatever process it might be, becomes so much easier because you can have data integrity. So it's about improving that journey for your customer, so that when they phone in because actually they want to talk to you about their rent or they want to report a repair, you've got their information, almost everything that you need to know about that person. And it gives that single view of the customer as well, which is something that I think housing associations generally struggle with, is that different departments have different views of that customer. It's obviously going to help with mitigating risks around having poor data quality. So, not having date of birth that makes sense, or having the default date of birth so that our residents are more than 100 years old, around sort of understanding who the occupants are within properties, and the household makeup as well. Some stuff around GDPR, because it wouldn't be a data session if we didn't talk about GDPR. And in the standard, what we've tried to do is highlight the areas, excuse me, that are potential personal data and then sensitive data as well. And there's a whole suite really of business benefits that we're thinking about. And on the other side, on the right hand side, is just the key entities that we created when we were looking at the customer data model. And as I said, there's a lot more information around this on the HACS website. So one of the briefs really that I was given was also to think about the challenges actually around data quality, and creating a data standard. So this is a high level view really of what it took to create version 1 of the data standard. So as I said, 17 housing associations who had about 300 hours of dialogue in these 9 workshops, and these were half-day workshops where we gathered as many of the partners together that we could, and worked through the process of creating the standard. And then on top of this, they also had homework. So they had to go back to their organisations and they had to speak to the subject matter experts about the areas of the standard. So it was quite an in-depth process to create 3 standards and just over 1,500 definitions for 150 entities. So a lot of work went into this. But this was really a proof of concept to kind of test the waters to see if the sector was ready for a standard and how much it would take to create one. So we're hoping that future versions will take a little bit less than this because the process is now in place. But that's kind of the high level view. I guess in terms of other barriers, it's about organisations having time and actually it fitting into their strategy of how they want to move this forward. It does take quite a commitment to do this. And the other challenge that we found is around legacy system providers for housing management, for example. They're the ones that we would really love to kind of implement the standard and change their systems in that way. That's quite a difficult conversation because it's removing a revenue stream from their bespoke integrations, and so that's something to kind of think about. And also just a cultural shift. Whilst the standard helps you with the data that you have, it doesn't necessarily improve the quality straight away. Things might actually get worse before they get better, because it shines a light on all of the areas where we might not have the data that we want, or it's not of the best quality that we want. So we have to kind of be prepared for that to happen. If anyone does have any questions, then at the end, please do fire them over. And if you want any more information, then the HAT website's got loads of stuff on it as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura. Yeah, again, lots of food for thought and lots to pick up on. And again, before we move on to our final presentation, I just encourage people to use to fire questions at our panelists, and Laura and Doug can obviously answer as Clinton's presenting in a minute, and we'll pick up on as many questions as we can at the end as well. Right, okay, thank you very much. And yeah, next up we've got Clinton Etheridge from Information Builders. So Clinton, it's over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, I'm Clinton Etheridge with Information Builders, and I'm glad you could join us today. Laura, thank you as well. I think you've teed me up very nicely with what you guys have done and your presentation. Our goal is to help housing associations make the most of their data to enhance services. I'll touch on some of the challenges and then highlight the strategy we believe will help you benefit the most with your data. Let's get slides to move. There we go. Together with our partners in the UK, we've seen the housing sector face a number of particularly tough challenges. Good news is that we have faced and successfully overcome them in many other sectors as well. We know from experience there is a way forward to combine leading technology solutions and housing expertise to drive dramatic impact and make the most of your data investments. Why do we believe this? Well, people are changing. They are expecting connected experiences. Think of your favorite brands and services you interact with regularly. The ones we advocate the most are the ones that give us a good connected experience, driving personalized information in the way we want to consume it. Essentially, an omni-channel approach, which is different for each person. If you optimize someone's experience, the impact can be huge. We all know that the Housing and Regeneration Act 2008 placed a lot more emphasis on the accountability of housing associations, and therefore has increased the pressure on you to deliver services in a more transparent way. The problem is, housing inherently requires a complex set of operations, and without integrated systems in place to support and manage properties, suppliers, service providers, and tenants, there are significant operational risks and cost overruns which can severely impact your revenues as well as your tenant experience. You're impacted in so many ways. Need to move back. There we go. You're impacted in so many different areas while generally attempting to run your association effectively. The combination of regulatory and governance factors such as GDPR, the risk of HCA downgrades, the EPC 2020 regulation, also the rollout of universal credit combined with the complexity of disparate data means the sector has a lot of immediate challenges just to stay up and running. The access to quality data within the housing sector is a significant challenge. From a generic study, it is evident that no industry is immune to data quality. The same holds for the housing sector. Manual data handling or entering is error-prone. Think about all those applications that have little or no validation when entering data, or those Excel files manually edited and passed between business users. I'll hazard to guess that most of you will have experience of this within your association. And the impact of this is often not fully understood. Putting processes in place to validate or cleanse data is obviously relatively cost-effective when compared to the potential impacts of fixing them. Anecdotally, one housing trust accidentally requested the renovation of 84 kitchens in a tower block. Thankfully, the service provider systems were current and alerted them that these kitchens had been refurbished 6 months prior, and therefore the work did not take place. I think we can agree that left unchecked, poor data costs associations significantly. We see many associations with a mix of legacy and newer systems covering finance, HR, asset management, and CRM for tenants. But one overriding theme is a proliferation of the use of Excel, a situation I'm sure many of you can associate with. The myriad of disparate off-the-shelf systems we see implemented but not integrated impacts on your ability to create an accurate 360-degree view of all your assets. As a consequence, in order to support their business processes, staff need to get data from multiple different systems and then end up managing and sharing this data in the form of Excel, PowerPoint, and Word docs. This sometimes uncontrolled use of ungoverned data or systems presents a huge risk in the area of GDPR and in getting an accurate view of assets and financial data that can have a negative impact in the support of your tenants. Together with our partners, we know there is a way forward to combine leading technology solutions and housing expertise to drive dramatic impact across your association and make the most of your data assets. The path to digital transformation is with the right strategy and technology foundations that enable the best possible tenant experiences. We've seen across different industries, including housing, that there is a path that can keep you focused on the tenant experience whilst moving towards a more integrated and effective way of managing your data. This involves a true digital transformation, understanding where you are, where you want to be, and the roadmap to get there. building governance and compliance with data quality infrastructure, ensuring trust, correct, and consistent data, which are the building blocks you need in order to understand your tenant DNA, which allows you to drive insight around them and your organizations, and then be able to shift your tenant engagement. You may think digital transformation is a huge undertaking. The secret that smart organizations have found, it is a continuous journey. You can drive value rapidly by applying these elements where you have the most impact, like tenant engagement. This is why we move forward. This is why we are here today, to let you know that within a matter of months, you can shift in your tenant's experience significantly, coming from both a better understanding and also driving actions that can impact them positively. The outcomes are huge if you can get it right. Building trust and providing the right support where needed, reducing operational costs and knowing where to focus efforts, reducing churn and building engagement with tenants and staff, and building a community where tenants are actually advocating your association. Even though the focus should quite rightly be about the tenant, and providing accurate, timely data within the organization is actually also key. So let's have a look at three of the main groups of data consumers that you may have in your organization. You have the management team who want a view across the organization. By pushing them key insights and letting them also self-service on data that is important to them drives huge impact. In addition, allowing the operational teams like housing officers, tenant services, and contact centers to access all of this information connected together in a single location can dramatically transform how they interact with tenants and suppliers. And then finally, you can also impact your tenants. If you can give them accurate insights from the operations team and give them accurate information that is valuable and valid for them, they become more engaged in this, and this builds trust. So supporting all of your data consumers with a common set of data is key, and this is our approach. What we do is give you the ability to rapidly pull together all of that different information from different systems and also draw on all that tribal knowledge that exists in your organization. It can help you fill in any data or integration gaps. For example, pulling data from external systems so you can create master views of your assets, your tenants, your employees, vulnerable people, properties, etc., and visualize a 360-degree view of each of these assets and report on them to the regulator with ease and with confidence. Then we generate insights that is delivered whenever and wherever it's needed for both internal and external users. This is a journey we've been on with various industries. To get started, you need to build the ability to see good quality data where people need it. You can then create trusted views of your tenants, your assets, and your services. You can automate the processes that tie into those sets of data. You can map the journey for tenants, staff members, and service providers and understand where you can improve and transform those journeys, and start to build a view of how people interact internally and externally across the association. We know every housing association is different. You may be a small association with limited number of properties. We may be a large association, or even one that has been brought together as a result of a merger. So the tasks you need to take and the outcomes that you need to drive may be very different. The framework and approach you should take is the same. We have the tools, domain expertise, and solutions to support you with the longer-term strategy, but start where it really delivers quick value fast. So listen, I realize that there's a lot on this slide, and we have three main focus areas: integration, integrity, and intelligence. There's a lot of capability here across those areas. Suffice to say, this enables organizations to operate on a single scalable platform, provides them with actionable information based on a consolidated view with trusted data. Our solutions are enterprise class, backed by more than 40 years of experience, combined with our proven expertise in solving complex challenges, and it delivers value faster. We believe that data and analytics are the drivers of digital transformation, and our mission is to help organizations like you make the most of your data assets. How do we apply this within housing associations? We can help you to deliver a more connected experience by enabling you to seamlessly integrate data from disparate sources, which is particularly valuable following the many mergers between associations that are happening. Our proven technology includes automated rules to integrate and cleanse data to provide associations with a single view, or golden record as it's sometimes referred to, for each tenant, property, team, or supplier. This consolidated view becomes the foundation for you to make changes and improvements in the way you run the various streams of activity. Having a trusted combined view of your data allows associations to be confident that they know exactly who their tenants are, where their housing stock is located, where spare capacity exists, when potential maintenance resource issues may occur, and what their financial obligations are, which means that you can more easily consolidate operations, optimize service delivery, and manage your assets more effectively. Focusing on data management is a positive move because it enables greater engagement with tenants, especially if you provide them with a web-based portal that allows them to self-serve and easily get secure access to relevant information, such as payment schedules, as well as raise maintenance requests. We firmly believe that housing associations that prioritize data management can reduce operational costs and free up contact center staff to better serve the needs of their tenants. We know that getting started on a data-driven journey involves stakeholders from across the organization. A prior experience of digital transformation and data strategy can enable a team to rapidly find ways to impact the data-driven challenges ahead. We appreciate that associations don't necessarily have the skills in-house to set up data quality and governance programs. That is why we are working to help leading housing associations to become beacon organizations. We'll provide a platform for beacon associations to lead by example by hosting data-focused roundtables and answering the questions and concerns of other associations so that they and their tenants may benefit from best practices in data quality and data governance. We offer many housing jumpstarts, including a free half-day business and IT stakeholders jumpstart. Now, I think with that, I'll end up and hand back to Martin. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, plenty to pick up on as we move forward. So I'll move. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for those presentations there. We'll now move on to a discussion about some of those issues that arise as a result. Just before we do that, I'll just mention again, if people can look to the right of their screens, and any questions that you want to our panelists to answer, please enter them into the box, and I'll pick up on them as part of the discussion, and obviously they can type back to you directly as well. So do fire some of those off to our panelists. But I'll start off with an issue, I guess, that everybody touched on to a degree, which is about standardization. I'd start off with the question, basically, where are we at now in terms of standardization and data quality? And I guess how fast is progress being made as well? Because this has been an area that I guess we've been talking about for some time as being a problem area in the housing sector for the social landlords. So where are we at? I guess how far have we got to go in terms of playing catch up? So Laura, I might throw that one at you because you talked about that fairly directly earlier. So I'll start with you, Laura, and then we'll move on to the other panelists.
Yeah, no, standardization really is a conversation that I think has been happening within the sector, and sort of data cleanse, which is the kind of the add-on to that as well. I think that we are now starting to make really good progress. Certainly the conversations that I've had with housing associations, everyone recognises the need for it now and the benefits that it will have. I think it's a daunting task. And one that, as I said, sort of takes a commitment and a resource requirement. But without it, we're not utilising the data that we have, and we're definitely not utilising it to its full capacity to really allow us to change the services for the better, to provide better experiences for our customers.
So I think Laura, when you say it's daunting, sorry to jump in, when you say it's daunting, is that actually putting people off taking action that perhaps they should be taking? I guess what's the cost of that, if you like, for people who haven't taken the step yet, or haven't perhaps moved as fast as some of the others?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily putting people off, but it's about trying to juggle all the priorities that obviously housing associations are trying to do, and the environment that we find ourselves in is a challenging one with with rent cut, with welfare reforms. So there's a lot that housing associations are trying to do, and I think a lot of people are beginning to see that actually underpinning a lot of the work that they're trying to do is the data, and a really good understanding of the data that they have. And so it's about finding how we pull that to the top of the priority list, as well as all the other things that we are trying to do. And as I said, I think the conversations are definitely moving in the right direction. It's something that the sector needs to do in order to be able to make those smarter decisions and to be able to pull their services and their service standard up to where they want them to be. So it's about kind of making that first step, and conversations that we have around the data standard is, if you can have a look at it and have a think about whether you can implement even part of it, that's kind of the initial step that you need to take. And from there, actually, it becomes a little bit downhill, because once you start with one thing and you start to reap the benefits of it, then over time it becomes easier.
Thanks very much. And I'll move on to Clinton next with the kind of same question, but I guess, I mean, you mentioned, I'll kind of mix things up a little bit, but you mentioned beacon associations, and I wonder how you think we can perhaps move from if you like, beacons in this area to it being more widespread, and that there being perhaps a slightly more rolled out approach. So Clinton, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Martin. I agree with Laura, and what we tend to do, well, we've discovered this is not unique to the housing associations or housing sector. And we encourage organizations not to look at let's say the forest, but look at the trees in the forest and take smaller steps, as opposed to trying to make massive changes in their approach. So looking at low-hanging fruits to identify areas where we can have quick wins, and being able to have the platform to share our experiences with other associations that are either haven't started the journey or are about to set out on that journey, greatly, I reckon, assist the sector.
Thanks very much, and I'll move, if I may, now to Douglas. Kind of the same question, and I guess obviously you were talking about the approach you've been taking earlier. To what extent is it important that there is standardization, or does it matter if Thames Valley decides it's got a particular set of priorities and it's going to approach things in a particular way? Does it really matter that the standardization, not just within an organisation, but perhaps more widely within the sector? So I'd be interested to understand how much that kind of feeds into your thoughts, kind of where you stand in the rest of the sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, every company has to have its internal standards to get data quality out. That's what it's all about. To get the quality out one side, you have to decide what a house is, what a unit is, what X, Y, and Z is. And we could carry on our own little blinkers and create our own internal data standards, and to an extent, it would work fine. But then if we go to a company and start trying to ask them to do something, they've got to then interpret what our data standard means, what everything else means. So the project that Hacks have got going on is about making sure that we all move in the same direction, and that the benefits there become, if us as Thames Valley Housing and another housing association want to work together on something, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, and we don't have to do it. And why would we spend all this time working out what our data standard is when there is already one out there that we can just pull in and use? And it means that when we put in a big CRM project, or when we put in something else, that understanding, that model is already there. Every housing association is going to be slightly different, and how they run their own business processes on top of the standard is going to be a question to understand, but it just jumpstarts everything along that way. And so I think for any collaboration, any real progress, data standards across the sector are essential. And I just want to, one more thing I was going to come back to about, they are hard work to get going, and they're hard work to put in on top, because they're hard to put on top of an existing estate when you've got a housing management system that's got fields all over the place. Trying to re-engineer all of that in a housing standard becomes quite a challenge. But you can either overlay something over the top of it and translate into it, or the real opportunity for the sector is, we're all mentioning mergers, we're all mentioning business change. So much is changing in the organisation at the moment. It's the perfect time to say, if we don't make that now, we're never going to address the technical debt we've got over decades. And now I really do feel is the time that a lot of housing associations are starting to look at what technology they need. And in order to do that, the standards come underneath it. That's my view.
Thanks very much. And I guess kind of following on from that and linked to all of this, the questions about how you best go about achieving behavioural change. And so, I mean, is it just the fact that circumstances are now right? Is it kind of beacons and individuals leading the way? What's the best way of actually making sure that you're seeing a kind of wider spread change within the sector? And Laura, I might jump back to you to have first go on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I actually think it's a combination of things. It is about having groups of like-minded individuals and like-minded organisations working together. And there are some fantastic examples of those within the sector for organisations that are sort of geographically located who want to share data with one another because they feel that it will enrich what they're trying to do, because there are not just housing associations who collect data, but obviously third parties, so people like the NHS as well have information about people that can help with the services that they deliver, and obviously around that becomes a lot of security issues and things like that. But it takes those organisations who want to work as a collective to really drive that forward, and if they can become the use case and the example of how it can be done, I think others will then follow suit. And as you say, it's that the time is right, that we're demanding more from the data that we have and needing more from it. So now is the time to sort of take the stand and say, well, this is what we're going to do about it. These are the proactive steps, and we recognise that it will be a challenge and that it will take time. But at the end of it, when we've gone through it, you know, the data quality will have improved, our understanding of our data will have improved, and our agility with systems will be far better than where we've started.
Thanks very much. And so we're moving away from certainly a position I can remember a few years ago, even when tracking down quite how many, I think somebody mentioned units and how they're defined units or homes people owned was tricky, never mind anything more advanced than that. Clinton, the same question to you, if that's okay. So yeah, how do you think we best go about achieving behavioural change?
Well, we've seen that collaboration. If we just look inside of an association, collaboration is key. So it's not just IT driven. You've got to involve the different stakeholders inside of an organization to help drive that cultural change. And when different people feel that they can contribute and add value, you have huge impact and huge results inside of an organization or an association. And similarly, that same approach in terms of collaboration between different associations will be probably part of the momentum we can use to drive the change that we're looking and hoping for in the sector.
Thanks very much. And I might move on a little bit, just with time running through. Want to make sure we cover as many issues as possible. And I think, as Laura was saying earlier, that there's not a discussion at the minute that doesn't involve GDPR. And you were just talking about security there as well. Yeah, I mean, again, that's been raised a couple of times, and I just wonder at this stage, how big an impact has it had? Is it likely to have? And do you think most landlords have prepared adequately for GDPR? And as an add-on to that, is there a concern that GDPR might limit people's ability to achieve their ambitions? Douglas, I might start with you first on that, if that's okay, and then move through the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at GDPR, just black and white compliance terms, there's X, Y, and Z you've got to do. It can become quite a hurdle. But if you come at an approach of saying, look, all of this data we manage, how do we manage it well, and how do we use it, whether it's personal data, commercial data, or whatever, and you instill that culture that we've been talking about, that data is the value and it can really change the business, then GDPR almost just comes by default off the back of that. So all the things about standards we're talking about, all the things about controlling the quality of it, you do that because you want to get the best value out of the data. GDPR just kind of gives you a framework to control it. So yeah, there's a challenge, and it's been a long conversation. But for us, in the context of we're going on this data journey, GDPR is just one of those strands, and actually it just meets it by osmosis, really, because it's just one of the things.
It's not giving you sleepless nights.
Not us, I have to say. I'm quite thankful that I know I've spoken to quite a few housing associations, and it's a mixed picture, I'd say. Some have left it late, and some are there, but it should be viewed as a good thing for our tenants, and therefore a good thing for housing associations.
Thanks very much. And Laura, does that ring true? Are you hearing that some have left it late? And again, that kind of question about the impact it's likely to have, and
Yeah, I think. Yeah, different organisations are definitely at different stages of the GDPR journey, and I think the level of nervousness also varies as well. For the most part, if housing associations and other organisations were DPA compliant, then actually it's not too much more of a leap to be GDPR compliant. And yeah, there are some additional things, but I think as Doug said, it's around having the respect for the data that you have and not collecting every piece of data because actually you think you need it, but understanding the pieces that you need and what it's reasonable to ask people for, and that you're actually going to utilize the amount of data that housing associations have that actually just kind of sits dormant. It's a lot, really. So GDPR is more just around focusing the efforts around this is the data that we need, this is how we're going to use it, and just being transparent about that so that people understand that there's a purpose for you asking their date of birth or for their income status, those kinds of things.
And you mentioned some people might be feeling nervous, or there's the range of where people are at with this. Are you saying there that perhaps people are being a bit needlessly nervous if they're already been thinking about a lot of the related issues? And if you are sitting, if some of our listeners are sitting here in that position, what's your kind of advice for them?
I think my advice for them is to get to grips with the data that they have, to obviously read through the GDPR documents which are out there from the ICO, and work your way through it. The 25th is looming, it's the end of the week, but it's about showing progress. It's about showing what you're doing to become compliant. It's not a case that on the 25th everything's suddenly going to break loose and fines are going to be issued everywhere. It's about making sure that you're demonstrating how you're keeping data secure, how you're making sure that people's information is secure, and actually that you're using it for reasonable use, and not collecting for the sake of collecting.
Thanks very much. And so the clock's ticking for GDPR and for us a little bit as well. So, but Clinton, I'll move to you very quickly on this, just for some thoughts from you on GDPR, and then I'll probably move to a question to round things off.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I'll agree with Laura and with Doug. And another aspect that we've assisted organisations with is not only identifying where personal identifiable information is expected in their data sets, but having the ability to profile data and identify where you find personally identifiable information where you wouldn't expect it, like in notes, columns, and so forth. Another value add would be the ability to reuse the processes that you've put in place to assist you with your GDPR process. With the rest of your regulatory requirements and data quality efforts.
Thanks very much. And I'd like to say we're kind of running short on time, so I'll round off with one last question, and I'll run through the panel, starting with Doug and through to Laura and Clinton. And I guess so probably some final thoughts, but perhaps if we're talking about one decision or one step social landlords could make tomorrow to improve their approach in this area, and I'm thinking just in terms of their thinking, how they're looking at their use of data. Douglas, I'll start with you. So some final thoughts and advice for landlords who might be thinking about what steps they could take.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's about maximising the value of the data, not the application. So any modelling you can do, any sort of drawing out of where the data currently is going to make it so much easier to work out how to get the data where it needs to be. I think that's the key for me.
Fantastic. And Laura, so same question to you, though. Closing thoughts and your one piece of closing advice, perhaps.
The hacked part of me says adopt the standard. That's the hacked part of me. But I agree with Doug. I think it's around respecting the data and understanding that any decisions that you want to make are going to have to be data driven and data evidenced. And so it's around understanding what you have and perhaps where you're missing information or where the information isn't quite at the integrity that you want it to be.
Thanks very much, and yeah, certainly would echo all of that from various research purposes, I think, as well. Clinton, some closing thoughts from you, and again, perhaps one piece of advice to the listeners.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, I think finding the balance between your data, your systems, and your people and processes is important. Not to lose heart because of the complexities that you seem to be faced, but to reach out to organizations that have the domain expertise and proven technology solutions to assist you on this journey. There are many out there, and we certainly would love to embrace and help associations that seem to be facing these challenges that we've discussed today.
Thanks very much, and a great place to end, I think. So some really good advice and some fascinating presentations from our panelists this afternoon. So I'd like to thank everybody for taking part. So Douglas, Laura, and Clinton, and thank all of you for listening in today to our webinar organised with Information Builders. So thank you all, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.